The X plus diamond hashtag grid pattern. What you do is you draw diagonal lines from each corner to make an X. You measure halfway up one side and you put a dot. You connect where the lines cross and the dot, you go all the way across. It'll be halfway up on the other side as well. You do the same thing at the top of the paper. You figure out where the middle is. You put a dot. As long as it goes from the dot through the center of the X to the other side, it'll be even on both sides. And you're going to make a line connecting where the other two X's are, across and horizontal. What you're going to do is create your grid, and then whatever picture you're drawing from, create the identical grid on that. And you just go box by box, copying the lines. You should be able to get the picture exactly. So here I am just going box by box and making a duplicate of the picture. Whatever line is in one box, I just make sure it's in the box of the corresponding paper. Now this works because the two pieces of paper are the exact same size, but the next thing I need to do is scale it up, which means I'm going to take a much larger paper with the same proportions, and I'm going to draw the same grid on the larger paper and go box by box. So that wasn't too hard to copy it when it's the identical size. But let's see what happens when I take a much larger paper. Now in this case, I'm going to be using a very light 2H pencil that is barely visible on the video camera. So I'm going to just speed through doing that. It's the exact same process with the diagonal lines. You can barely see them, and that's the point because I'm going to erase them later. So the small paper, as long as it's got the same aspect ratio, the same proportions, it should work. So I'm cutting out my frog, and I'm going to do the identical grid on the frog. The diagonal lines. Instead of measuring, I'm just folding because it's the paper I'm copying from. It's not my artwork. So instead of measuring, I'm folding. I'm making the vertical line, the horizontal line for the cross. Then I'm making the diamond. And then everywhere the lines cross, I'm making horizontal and vertical lines. Now I have the identical diamond grid on my small paper as I have on my large paper. Now in this case, what I'm doing is every time I draw a line on the large paper, I'm also outlining it on the small paper. So I'll just do a small little line segment on the small paper and the identical line segment larger on the big paper. And that way I sort of know how my marker needs to swoop and how my line, what direction the line goes in by tracing it on the small paper. And I know I just need to enlarge it on the bigger paper. So all I'm doing is I'm just going diamond, triangle by triangle, and I'm not going to the next shape until all the lines in the preceding shape are drawn in. And it's just a matter of connecting things. You see how I'm scaling it up. And because I'm going triangle by triangle instead of looking at the whole paper, it forces me to focus on the direction of the line and what the line looks like instead of seeing the entire frog. It makes me focus on details and shapes that I might not have otherwise noticed. Now I'm actually adding in another grid line because I forgot one. It helps when you're drawing something complicated and confusing to draw that you might not ordinarily draw. And the frog has these very long back legs with a lot of confusing shapes, so this helps to be able to get it drawn accurately. When you're done, you just completely erase the grid, and no one's to know that you actually used a grid to draw. You can also just draw the grid with a very, very, very light pencil and the picture with a much darker pencil, and then go in and erase the grid. But the idea is that the grid isn't part of the artwork. It's just there as a guide, and then you get rid of it before you start coloring and shading. So this is the original grid. This is the grid on the photograph. This is the grid on my drawing. And this is how the grid looks enlarged. And if you zoom in close, you can see the very light, faint lines that help guide me.